The massive alien ship drifted silently through the void, its sleek purple hull gleaming under distant starlight. On its bridge, High Commander Reed stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his tall frame casting a long shadow across the polished floor. His large eyes, adapted for seeing in the darkness of space, widened as the ship's sensors detected something unusual. "Commander, you need to see this," called out Officer Miller from his monitoring station. His fingers danced across the holographic display, bringing up detailed scans of the sector ahead. Reed moved closer, his movements graceful despite the artificial gravity. "What have you found?" "A fleet, sir. But it's unlike anything we've ever seen before." Miller adjusted the view screen, revealing a vast collection of ships floating in perfect formation. "They appear to be ancient, very ancient." Reed leaned forward, his antennae twitching with curiosity. The ships before them were massive, capital ships that stretched for kilometers. But their design was puzzling. Instead of the smooth energy state materials used by modern civilizations, these vessels were built from metal alloys. Their hulls were thick and heavily armored, with visible weapon ports and engine arrays that spoke of nuclear propulsion rather than quantum drives. "Primitive," Reed muttered, though something about the fleet's perfect positioning made him uneasy. "How many?" "Over 3,000 vessels, Commander. And they're maintaining perfect formation despite being obviously powered down." Miller's voice held a note of awe. The level of engineering required to maintain such precision over what appears to be centuries. Reed waved his hand dismissively. "Ancient relics, nothing more. Notify the Federation Council. This sector was marked for colonization, and we'll need to clear this space junk before we can proceed." Within hours, the Federation's response fleet arrived. 5 massive ships, each carrying hundreds of smaller research and salvage vessels, took position around the ancient fleet. The Federation Council members gathered in their grand chamber, their images projected via hologram onto Reed's bridge. "These vessels appear to be from a pre-quantum civilization," announced Dr. Wilson, the lead researcher, as she presented her initial findings. "Based on the materials used, I'd estimate they're at least 800 years old. The technology is crude: nuclear fusion drives, metallic armor, and what appears to be primitive energy weapons." The council members laughed, their various alien forms shimmering in the holographic display. "To think," one of them said, "that someone once thought these would be effective warships. They wouldn't last 5 minutes against our smallest patrol vessel." But Dr. Wilson wasn't laughing. She zoomed in on one of the larger vessels, highlighting strange markings along its hull. "There's something odd about these ships. The formation they're maintaining. It's mathematically perfect. And these markings, they're similar to fragments we've discovered coming from the direction of that backwater world." "Earth." "Impossible," Reed interrupted. "Those humans barely have colonies on their own moons. They couldn't have built something like this, even if it is primitive by our standards." "Nevertheless," Wilson continued, "I recommend caution as we begin salvage operations. These ships may be old, but their preservation is remarkable." "Almost as if." "As if what, Doctor?" Reed asked sharply. "As if they were meant to last this long. As if they were waiting for something." Reed stared at the fleet through his viewport. Despite his dismissive words, he felt a chill run down his spine. The ancient ships loomed in the darkness, their scared hulls telling stories of battles long past. Their weapon ports, though dormant, seemed to watch the Federation ships with patient, sleeping eyes. "Begin salvage operations," he ordered, pushing aside his unease. "The Federation needs this sector clear within the month. These relics have no place in modern space." As the salvage ships moved toward the ancient fleet, none of the Federation members noticed the small power signatures beginning to flicker deep within the dormant vessels. Like a giant slowly waking from a long slumber, something was stirring in the depths of those primitive ships. The Federation was about to learn a valuable lesson about judging things by their appearance, and about the dangers of underestimating those who came before. The salvage operation began at dawn, measured by the Federation's standard time. Small worker ships swarmed around the ancient fleet like busy insects, their scanning beams coating the massive hulls in green light. Dr. Wilson stood in her research vessel's observation room, something bothering her about the whole situation. Team Leader Anderson, she called out to her salvage chief, "Please have your crews maintain a safe distance while scanning. Something doesn't feel right about these energy readings." Anderson's voice crackled over the comm. "With respect, Doctor, these ships are dead. They've been floating here for centuries. What could possibly?" His words cut off as a sudden pulse of energy rippled through his scanner. The device sparked, its screen going dark. "Anderson, what happened?" Wilson moved closer to the window, her four-fingered hand pressing against the transparent metal. "Just an equipment malfunction, Doctor. Though." He paused, checking his backup scanner. "That's odd. The metal in these ships, it's not corroded, not even a little bit. 800 years in space, and it looks almost new under all this cosmic dust." Wilson's research team gathered more unusual readings as the day progressed. The fleet's formation wasn't just perfect, it was impossibly so. No known anchoring technology could maintain such precise positioning over centuries. Yet here these ships were, arranged in a pattern so exact it could only be intentional. In his command ship, High Commander Reed received the latest reports with growing irritation. More delays. "These are scrap ships, nothing more. The Federation Council expects this sector cleared on schedule." "Sir," his science officer spoke up, "Dr. Wilson's team has found something interesting. The markings on the hull, they're not just similar to Earth languages. They're an exact match to an old human writing system called English." Reed's antennae twitched in annoyance. "Impossible. Those humans are centuries away from building anything close to this scale. Their biggest ships are barely worth calling spaceworthy." But doubt had begun to creep into his mind. He brought up the scans on his personal display, studying the massive ships more carefully. Their design was unlike anything in the Federation's historical records. If humans hadn't built them, who had? And why did they use human writing? In the salvage field, more strange events began to occur. Worker ships reported their cutting tools failing when they touched the hull. Scanning beams seemed to slide off certain sections of the ships. And most disturbing of all, some crews swore they felt vibrations coming from deep within the supposedly dead vessels. Dr. Wilson ordered a deep scan of the fleet's flagship, a behemoth twice the size of the others. The results made her scales tingle with excitement and fear. "These ships," she announced to her team, "they're not powered down. They're in some kind of hibernation mode. Look at these power readings. They're barely detectable, but they're there. Steady, constant, like a heartbeat." She sent her findings to Commander Reed, adding an urgent warning. "Sir, I strongly recommend we halt salvage operations. These ships, there's active technology in there. Technology we don't understand." Reed read the report, his pride battling with his instinct for caution. The Federation had encountered many ancient civilizations' remains before. All had been exactly what they appeared to be, relics of the past, ready for recycling. But something about these ships was different. As if responding to their scrutiny, a faint blue light began pulsing along the fleet's hull markings. The English letters, which had seemed like simple identification markers, started to glow with an inner light. "Doctor," Anderson's panicked voice came through the comm. "The ship we were cutting, it's healing itself. The metal is flowing back together." Wilson watched in amazement as the damaged section of hull rippled and sealed itself, leaving no trace of the cutting attempt. These weren't just ships. They were something else entirely. She opened a channel to Commander Reed. "Sir, we need to stop. Now, these ships aren't dead. They're sleeping. And I think," she swallowed hard, "I think we're waking them up." In the silence of space, The ancient fleet continued its patient vigil, its secrets still untold, waiting for the right moment to reveal its true nature to those who had dared to underestimate it. The Federation's salvage operation came to an abrupt halt when their sensors detected a new ship entering the sector. It was small compared to their vessels, barely a quarter the size of Reed's command ship. Its design was simple, functional, and unmistakably human. "Sir," Officer Miller reported, his voice tense, "the approaching vessel is broadcasting an identification signal. It's the UES Discovery, an Earth exploration ship." Commander Reed watched the human ship's approach with disdain. It moved on conventional engines, its hull a plain gray metal. Everything about it screamed primitive technology. "Open a channel," he ordered. "Let's tell these humans to return to their own space." The main screen lit up, showing the bridge of the human vessel. Captain Thompson stood there, his face pale but determined. He was an older man with gray hair and weathered features, wearing a simple blue uniform with minimal decorations. "Federation vessels," Thompson said, his voice steady despite the situation. "This is Captain James Thompson of the United Earth ship Discovery. May I ask why you're attempting to salvage our property?" Reed's antennae shot up in surprise. "Your property? These derelict vessels have been abandoned in space for centuries. They're scheduled for removal to make way for Federation expansion." Thompson's expression hardened. "Commander, those aren't derelict vessels. That's the Emergency Exodus Fleet, launched during the resource wars of 2157. They're humanity's insurance policy, and they're very much still under Earth's protection." Laughter erupted from several Federation officers on the bridge. Reed himself couldn't help but smile condescendingly. "Captain, surely you jest. These ships are far beyond your civilization's capabilities. The technology required to maintain them in such perfect formation alone is exactly what we designed them to do," Thompson interrupted. "Commander, I strongly suggest you withdraw your salvage teams immediately. Those ships' defense systems are still active, even in hibernation mode." In her research vessel, Dr. Wilson listened to the exchange with growing excitement. "The markings match perfectly," she muttered to herself. "The material composition, the design philosophy, it all makes sense now. They built these ships to last, not to impress." Reed was less convinced. "Captain Thompson, these vessels use nuclear propulsion and metal hulls. They're relics compared to our quantum drives and energy state materials. Do you expect us to believe humans built this fleet? Your species barely has a presence beyond your own solar system." Thompson's reply was calm but carried a weight that silenced the bridge. "Commander, humanity learned long ago that flash and glamour mean nothing in the face of time. Every material in those ships was chosen for one purpose: to survive. Those nuclear engines, they'll still work perfectly 1,000 years from now, while your quantum drives need constant maintenance. That primitive metal hull, it self-repairs and gets stronger with age." As if to emphasize his point, more of the ancient fleet's marking began to glow. The massive ships hummed with awakening power, their supposedly primitive weapons ports sliding open with practiced precision. "Those ships," Thompson continued, "carry everything humanity knew, everything we built, everything we were. We designed them not to be the most advanced, but to be eternal. To wait out there in the darkness until they were needed, ready to protect Earth if we ever faced extinction." Dr. Wilson's voice came urgently over the comm. "Commander Reed, he's telling the truth. These energy readings, they're off our charts. The technology isn't primitive, it's just built differently, built to last." Reed watched as more systems activated across the ancient fleet. What his people had dismissed as simple metal was revealing itself to be something far more sophisticated. The ships moved in perfect synchronization, their formation tightening as dormant weapons came online. "Captain Thompson," Reed said, his voice losing its condescending tone, "perhaps we should discuss this situation more diplomatically." Thompson nodded, a small smile playing at his lips. "That would be wise, Commander. After all, There's an old saying on Earth, don't judge a book by its cover. The ancient fleet now hung in space, fully awakened, its true power evident to all. The Federation's salvage teams retreated to their ships, leaving behind their cutting tools, which had barely scratched the surface of humanity's greatest achievement. A fleet built not for show, but for survival. Deep within the ancient fleet's flagship, something stirred. The salvage attempts had triggered long-dormant security protocols, sending waves of activation signals through the sleeping giants. In the command center of the largest ship, screens flickered to life for the first time in centuries. Warning: unauthorized salvage attempt detected. Initiating Guardian Protocol, announced a calm, deep voice that echoed through the massive vessel. Lines of blue light raced along the corridors as the ship's AI, Guardian, began its boot sequence. On the Discovery, Captain Thompson watched his display light up with information. "They've done it now," he muttered. "Guardians awake." The Federation ships hung in space, their crews watching in stunned silence as the ancient fleet came alive. What had seemed like simple metal plates shifted and moved, revealing layers of technology that had been hidden beneath. The hull wasn't just self-repairing, it was transforming. "Scanning," Guardian announced, its voice now broadcasting on all frequencies. Human biosignatures detected on vessel designated Discovery. Initiating authentication protocols. Commander Reed and his bridge crew watched in amazement as the massive flagship's outer layer rippled like water. Weapon ports that had appeared primitive now opened to reveal technology that made their own weapons look like toys. "This is impossible," Reed whispered. "Those are quantum phase cannons, but the design, it's unlike anything we've ever seen." Dr. Wilson's voice crackled over the comm, filled with excitement. "Commander, these ships, they're not just warships. They're carrying something else. My scans show massive data storage systems, hydroponics bays, manufacturing facilities. It's like they packed an entire civilization in here." Guardian's voice came again, stronger now. "Authentication complete. Captain Thompson, welcome back. Status report. All systems functioning at optimal levels. Fleet integrity at 99.97%. Power cores stable and operating at 40% capacity." Thompson smiled at the familiar voice. "Hello, Guardian. Good to see you're still keeping watch." "Always, Captain. I detect unauthorized salvage attempts on hull sections 17 through 24. Shall I demonstrate our defensive capabilities?" "That won't be necessary," Thompson replied quickly, noting the panic on Reed's face. "Let's show them something else instead. Initiate Presentation Protocol 3. The space between the ships suddenly filled with holographic displays, but these weren't like the Federation's flickering projections. These images were solid, crystal clear, showing the history of the fleet's construction. They watched as humanity, facing crisis, poured everything they had into building these vessels. "The resource wars taught us something important," Thompson explained to the stunned Federation officers. "Technology isn't about being flashy. It's about survival. Every piece of these ships was built to evolve, to repair, to grow stronger with time." Guardian added, "Current fleet capabilities exceed original specifications by 47%. Automated improvement systems have continued operation throughout dormancy period." The Federation crews watched in awe as the fleet demonstrated its true nature. Sections of hull plating transformed into advanced sensor arrays. Hidden hangars opened, revealing swarms of autonomous repair drones. Energy fields rippled between the ships, forming complex patterns that their sensors couldn't even begin to understand. But they're made of metal." Reed protested weakly. "Simple nuclear power." Thompson laughed. "Commander, did you really think we'd build our survival fleet with technology that could fail? Those simple metal hulls are actually billions of tiny machines, constantly repairing and improving themselves. The nuclear cores, they're just the backup power supply. The main reactors are, well, let's just say they're a bit more advanced." Guardian's voice held a note of pride as it announced, "All systems now at full readiness. Fleet combat capability, superior to all known current technology. Defensive systems, fully operational. Knowledge banks, intact and updated. Dr. Wilson, who had been analyzing the data streaming from the fleet, suddenly gasped. Commander Reed, these ships, they've been learning, studying. Every piece of technology they've encountered over the centuries, they've analyzed and improved upon. They're not just ancient vessels. They're the most advanced ships in known space. The ancient fleet hung in formation, its true power now evident to all. What the Federation had dismissed as primitive relics had revealed themselves to be humanity's greatest achievement. Ships that grew stronger with each passing year, protecting the legacy of Earth while they slept among the stars. Now then, Thompson said calmly, shall we discuss proper diplomatic relations? The Federation Council demanded an emergency meeting following the fleet's awakening. Their holographic forms flickered in the grand meeting chamber of Reed's command ship, where Captain Thompson now stood as Earth's representative. Dr. Wilson sat nearby, still analyzing the streams of data from the ancient vessels. Explain, demanded the council leader, his multifaceted eyes fixed on Thompson. How did humans build such ships? Your civilization was barely starting space travel when these were launched. Thompson walked to the center of the chamber, his boots echoing on the polished floor. Behind him, through the vast windows, the ancient fleet gleamed with renewed power, its hull markings pulsing with soft blue light. 800 years ago, Thompson began, Earth faced multiple crises: climate change, resource depletion, wars over what remained. But in that darkness, humanity made a choice. Instead of fighting over the last scraps, we poured everything we had into a survival plan. Guardian's voice joined the conversation, its calm tones filling the chamber. Project Exodus began in 2157. Humanity dedicated 80% of Earth's remaining resources to the construction of this fleet. Dr. Wilson looked up from her data screens, adding, the engineering is brilliant in its simplicity. They didn't try to make the most advanced ships possible. They made ships that would survive anything. Thompson nodded. Every piece of technology in these ships was chosen for one purpose: to last forever. The metal hulls. They're made of self-replicating nanomachines that repair and improve themselves. The nuclear engines. They can run for thousands of years without maintenance. But the formation, Reed interrupted. No anchoring technology could maintain such perfect positioning for centuries. That's because we don't use anchors, Thompson smiled. Each ship's position is maintained by a quantum entanglement network. They're literally linked at the atomic level. Distance means nothing to them. Guardian displayed holographic schematics of the fleet's systems. The Federation Council members leaned forward, their earlier dismissiveness replaced by growing awe as they understood the true scope of human engineering. These ships, Guardian explained, carry everything humanity knew: our history, our technology, our art, our culture. They are more than warships. They are humanity's backup plan. If Earth had fallen, they would have ensured our civilization survived. Dr. Wilson stood up excitedly. The design is incredible. Look at these backup systems. Everything has redundancies. Even the redundancies have redundancies. And the AI core, Guardian, isn't just a computer. It's a living library of human knowledge that grows and learns. But why? Asked the council leader. Why build them this way? Thompson's face grew serious. Because humanity learned the hard way that flash and glamour mean nothing. Your quantum drives are impressive, but they need constant maintenance. Your energy state materials are powerful, but they degrade. We built these ships to survive anything: time, war, even the death of our civilization. Guardian displayed more images, showing the fleet's construction. Millions of humans working together, pouring their knowledge, their hopes, their very future into these vessels. Each ship, Thompson continued, carries enough technology and resources to rebuild human civilization from scratch. The metal hulls you mocked, They contain billions of years of evolutionary algorithms. The primitive weapons. They had centuries to analyze and adapt to every form of combat they've observed. Reed stood silently, remembering how he had laughed at these ships just days ago. Now he understood. Humanity hadn't built warships. They had built arcs, designed to carry their species' legacy through the endless dark between the stars. The fleet remains in hibernation, Guardian announced, but maintains constant vigilance. Earth survived and prospered, but we stay ready. We watch, we learn, we protect. Dr. Wilson's scanners beeped with new data. These ships aren't just old, she whispered. They're still evolving, still growing stronger. Every day they spend in space makes them more powerful. Thompson looked at the Federation Council, his eyes reflecting the ancient fleet's glowing markings. Now you understand. We didn't build these ships to impress anyone. We built them to outlast everyone. They're humanity's greatest achievement, not because they're the most advanced, but because they're eternal. The chamber fell silent as the truth sank in. What they had dismissed as space junk was actually humanity's masterpiece, a fleet that would sail the stars forever, carrying the legacy of Earth to the end of time itself. The revelation about the fleet's true nature had shaken the Federation Council. Most members sat in stunned silence, processing what they had learned. But High Commander Reed stood up, his pride wounded by this turn of events. "This is nonsense," he declared, his antennae quivering with anger. "You expect us to believe that a primitive species built something this advanced? No. These must be ships you found, technology you stole. Humans are barely space-capable." Dr. Wilson tried to interrupt. "Commander, the evidence is clear." "Silence," Reed shouted. He turned to the council. "Distinguished members, this is clearly a human trick. They're trying to claim power they don't deserve. I recommend immediate military action to seize these vessels." The council chamber erupted in chaos. Some members protested, while others nodded in agreement with Reed. Captain Thompson stood calmly in the center, watching as Guardian's blue lights pulsed more intensely. "Commander Reed," Thompson said quietly, "I strongly advise against this course of action." Reed wasn't listening. He was already barking orders into his comm unit. "All ships, battle stations, target the human vessel first, then concentrate fire on the fleet's command ship. Let's see how advanced these relics really are." "Sir," Officer Miller protested, "our scans indicate their defensive capabilities far exceed." "They're antiques," Reed shouted. "Ancient ships built by primitives. Fire when ready." Guardian's voice echoed through every ship in the sector. "Warning. Hostile action detected. Initiating defensive protocols. Captain Thompson, please confirm response level." Thompson sighed heavily. "Minimal force, Guardian. Educational purposes only." The Federation's newest battleships opened fire, their quantum cannons lighting up space with deadly energy. Dr. Wilson held her breath, expecting devastation. Instead, something extraordinary happened. The ancient fleet didn't dodge. It didn't return fire. Instead, the supposedly primitive metal hulls rippled like water. The quantum blasts simply disappeared into them, absorbed completely. Then, one by one, small ports opened along the fleet's ships. "Demonstration beginning," Guardian announced calmly, showing 0.01% of defensive capabilities. Thin beams of light shot out from the ports, precisely hitting each Federation ship's weapons. The quantum cannons simply switched off. Reed stared in disbelief as his mighty fleet was disarmed in seconds. "Impossible," he whispered. "No," Thompson corrected him. "Just good engineering." "Guardian, please explain to the commander what just happened." "The fleet's hull material," Guardian began, "is designed to absorb and analyze any weapon used against it. Your quantum cannons were scanned, understood, and countered within 0.3 seconds of first impact. We now have detailed plans for building improved versions of your weapons. Thank you for the data." Dr. Wilson's scanner was going crazy. The metal. It's not just absorbing the energy. It's learning from it, getting stronger. These ships don't just survive attacks. They evolve from them. Reed's face had turned pale. His mighty fleet now hung helpless in space, all weapons disabled by technology he had called primitive just hours ago. The ancient fleet's ports were still open, their mysterious weapons ready but waiting. "Your weapons have been temporarily disabled," Guardian announced. This demonstration used approximately 1/100% of our combat capabilities. Would you like to see more? No. Several council members shouted at once. The council leader stood up, his many eyes fixed on Reed. "Commander Reed, stand down immediately. You're relieved of command." Thompson walked over to Reed, who had slumped in his chair. "Commander, humanity learned long ago that looking primitive can be an advantage. Our fleet doesn't need to look impressive. It just needs to work. Forever." The ancient ships hung in formation, their blue lights pulsing steadily. They had faced their first challenge in centuries and hadn't even needed to flex their full strength. The Federation fleet's quantum cannons, their pride and joy, had been brushed aside like toys. "Now then," Thompson said, addressing the council, "should we return to discussing diplomatic relations, or would anyone else like a demonstration?" The council chamber was very, very quiet. In space, the ancient fleet continued its vigilant watch, its primitive hulls now shimmering with absorbed quantum energy, growing ever stronger from the attack that was meant to destroy it. 1 month after the confrontation, the Federation Council gathered again. This time, they met on Earth, in a simple but elegant conference room overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The council members had spent weeks studying the ancient fleet, and what they learned had changed their view of humanity forever. "The trade agreements are ready for signing," announced the council leader, looking at Captain Thompson with newfound respect. "Earth will be granted full membership in the Federation, with all rights and privileges." Dr. Wilson, now head of the Joint Human Federation Research Team, displayed her latest findings. "The fleet's technology is revolutionary in its simplicity. While we focused on making things more complex, humans perfected the basics." Former Commander Reed sat quietly in a corner. After the incident, he had requested to stay on Earth as a cultural observer. The past weeks had taught him more about humanity than all his years of space exploration. "Tell me, Captain," he asked during a break in the proceedings, "why didn't Earth ever show its true capabilities before? Why maintain the appearance of being primitive?" Thompson smiled, looking out at the ocean. "Would you have believed us if we had told you? Sometimes, the best way to be strong is to let others underestimate you." Guardian's voice joined the conversation through the room's speakers. "Humans have a saying, pride goes before a fall. The fleet was built during Earth's darkest hours, when we learned that survival matters more than appearance." The council members toured Earth's main shipyard, where new vessels were under construction. These ships combined Federation quantum technology with humanity's principles of eternal design. Dr. Wilson explained the process to the amazed visitors. "See these hull plates?" She pointed to seemingly simple metal sections. "They're grown, not built. Like the ancient fleet's hulls, they'll repair themselves, learn from damage, and grow stronger over time. They might look basic, but they'll still be working long after more advanced materials have failed." In orbit, the ancient fleet maintained its perfect formation, now joined by Federation vessels, learning new ways of thinking about space travel. Engineer teams from both civilizations worked together, sharing knowledge and discovering that both had much to learn from each other. "Your quantum drives are impressive," Thompson told a group of Federation engineers, "but they need constant maintenance. We're showing you how to make them self-repairing, like our ships. They'll be less flashy, but they'll work forever." Reed watched a demonstration where a small piece of the fleet's hull material was subjected to various weapons. Each attack made the metal stronger, its structure adapting and improving. All this time, he mused, "We thought advancement meant making things more complicated. You showed us that true progress can mean making things simpler, but perfect. The council leader addressed the final session of the membership negotiations. We came to Earth expecting to find a primitive civilization. Instead, we found masters of eternal engineering. Your fleet is not the most advanced we've seen. It's better than that. It's eternal. Thompson nodded. That's what humanity learned from our darkest days. The best technology isn't the flashiest or the most powerful. It's the technology that lasts, that grows, that never stops working, no matter what happens. Guardian added its thoughts. The fleet represents humanity's greatest lesson, that survival depends not on being the most advanced, but on being the most resilient. As the sun set over the Pacific, the ancient fleet's lights could be seen twinkling in the darkening sky. 800 years after its launch, it was still growing, still learning, still protecting. Federation ships now patrolled alongside it, their own designs beginning to show signs of human influence. Simpler, stronger, eternal. Dr. Wilson's final report summed up what everyone had learned. The Federation taught us about quantum physics and energy states. We taught them about making things that last forever. Together, we're building something greater than either of us could have achieved alone. The stars shone down on a changed galaxy. The civilization that had laughed at humanity's primitive fleet now studied its wisdom, learning that true advancement sometimes meant looking beyond the surface to find the real strength that lay beneath. In the end, humanity's greatest achievement wasn't building the most advanced fleet in space. It was building one that would outlast them all.